pass over to the lovely Dave, who is in Boston. And believe it or not, his backdrop is real, everybody. You'll see
it. Real background, yeah.
So over to you, Dave. Lovely to have you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let me just get my screen up there. Okay, you guys should be seeing that now. Yes. As mentioned, yes, my name is Dave Charest. I am the Director of Small Business Success at Constant Contact. I'm also the host of the Be a Marketer podcast for Constant Contact. If you're LinkedIn, please do reach out. I'd love to connect with you there. For those of you who may not be familiar with Constant Contact, we've been helping small businesses and not-for-profits for coming up on 30 years now, and we help them reach their marketing goals with our easy-to-use digital marketing platform. You can, of course, find out more about our tools by scanning that QR code that you have on your screen. I've been working with Constant Contact for over 13 years now. People often ask me, hey, what keeps you at the company for so long? And for me, it really boils down to three things. I'm passionate about helping small businesses and not-for-profits succeed. The people that I work with on a day-to-day basis also share that same passion, and we're all really focused on delivering the tools and insights so you can make progress with your marketing from wherever you're starting in your journey. Really grateful for the opportunity to be here with you today. Thank you, of course, for choosing to spend some time with us. And we are here to discuss why your digital story matters. And if you think about it, people are often trying to confirm that your business is actually for them. And that means whether someone has referred your business, a potential customer finds you through search, or they engage with you on social media, you really need to show up consistently and clearly articulate the value that your business offers in order to grow. What you do, why you do it, and why it matters really must come through in that digital story that you're telling. And that consistent messaging, of course, extends to all of your marketing channels. It allows you to attract the right customers and really build the right relationships that build your business forward. And so today, it's really my pleasure to hand it over to Stacey Kehoe, digital marketing expert and founder of Brandlective, to share her expertise and insights into why your digital story matters. Stacey, over to you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your introduction, Dave. We're pleased to be here today, and thank you, Karen, for the invitation. So today, why your digital story matters. Well, I want to begin by doing a quick introduction to myself, just so you understand my background. As Dave mentioned, my name is Stacey Kehoe. I'm the founder of a digital marketing agency called Brandlective here in London. And I've also written a book called Get Online, the 6 simple steps to building a digital marketing pipeline for the non-tech savvy. I also host a podcast by the same name. So I'm very, very passionate about helping businesses and individuals really raise their profiles online, get them the visibility that I think they deserve for the amazing, awesome work that they do. So very excited to be speaking to you about this subject today. But let's begin by discussing what is a digital story. Now, as most people do these days, I went to ChatGPT to ask what they thought a digital story would be, and it spat out this little blurb for me. A digital story is a narrative that combines various multimedia elements, such as text, images, audio, video, and interactive content to tell a compelling story in a digital format. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds like a bit of a faff. And it's a little bit overwhelming and difficult to understand. And so I want to make this a lot more simple. So my simplified version of this is really a digital story is about getting found online for the thing that you care about the most. So I want you to have that in the back of your mind today as we're considering this. The work that we're going to do today will be around what is it that you want to communicate to the world, and how can that be best achieved? So why does it matter? Does your story matter? Does it add real value to your business? I think the answer is yes. And I think it's for this type of engagement that you have with your customers. It's all about connection. It's all about the way customers feel when they're doing business with you. Wouldn't we love every customer to look this happy when they're making a purchase from us? And a lot of this stems from having a really powerful story, a really big reason why we're doing what we do, that we're telling people about, because all of us started a business for a reason. And it's really about making sure that we're sharing that story with customers so that they can build a relationship and feel connected to us. If you needed 4 reasons to jump on this bandwagon, here they are. The first is building a digital story really supports you with building a familiarity principle. So that's something that's also known as the mere exposure effect, something I'm very passionate about and speak about a lot, which basically is the reason it's so interesting. It's actually a psychological phenomenon whereby people that see things regularly, so when you see the same thing repeatedly over and over and over again, you become familiar with it. And when you're familiar with something, you have a far greater chance of liking it. And we all know the saying, what we know is what we like is what we trust. Know, like, trust. We talk about this all the time in business. So really playing on that mere exposure effect, that familiarity principle is going to help you cut through with your digital story and really get in front of the customers that you're excited to do business with. Another reason to get behind sharing your story is the emotional connection that you will develop with your prospects. So it really helps to communicate, to humanize your content. It makes you much more relatable. It makes you much more memorable. So that emotional connection is something that we're really driving for when it comes to telling your digital story. Audience reach seems like an obvious one, right? Digital stories are really shareable. This can get your content or the idea of the thing that you're passionate about or your business in front of people from all over the world, and a much more diverse sort of audience. No longer does it mean that you have to just be contained in your little network or your little circle in your part of the world. Your story and the thing that you are passionate about can be out there and you can reach, millions and millions of people. So the reach is really important. And then finally, it just really supports with your brand differentiation. So for businesses, digital storytelling is a really powerful way to stand out and create a unique identity in a really crowded market, which is tough, right? So for a lot of people on the call here, they're smaller businesses where none of us are running a business that has never been run before, right? We have a lot of competitors. There's a lot of people that work in our same field. So how do we stand out and how do we set ourselves apart from every other business? And a really big part of that is your story, is the reason that you are passionate about what you're doing. So I'm really excited to kind of run through this with you today. Now, I love a framework. I think a framework really helps us to plan and to be able to put a bit of a formula to creating digital content. So this one I call the game changer. This is actually a 6-step marketing formula, but it applies beautifully to telling your digital story too. So I'm going to talk you through this very quickly. The first step is really connect. So this is all about the way that you connect with your audience. So it's the story that you're telling. It's the reason that you do what you do. It's that form of connection. The second step, once you've got that story in place, is creating content and assets that you can share with your audience so that they can actually learn about you and your story and your business. Once we've created assets, we then want to find a way of getting them in front of people. So it moves us on to step 3, which is captivate. So we need to captivate their attention so that they're actually consuming that story. Once we've got their attention, we want to push them to something like a website where we capture their details. So that brings us on to step 4, which is capture. And then from there, we actually move into step 5, which is converse. And that's all about communicating, nurturing, really building relationships with people, and your storytelling kind of continues. And then in the world of marketing, you would have step 6, which is convert, to actually doing the sale, right? People buying from you. But today we're going to walk through the first 5 steps because I think they play beautifully into building a digital story. So let's start from the beginning, connect. So this is where I want you considering, and everyone just take a minute right now to just think about this. What is driving you? Why are you passionate about what you're doing? Why did you start doing what you do? Why did you start a business? That's a really important thing for you to just be really clear on. Now, if you're a newer business, perhaps that's more prevalent. Sometimes when we've been in business a little while, we kind of forget a little bit about what we're doing and why we're doing it. So take a moment to just consider, what is your story? What is this mission that you're on? What do you stand for? And then lastly, once you figure that out, the second step of this is really, who are you trying to reach with that story? Who are you trying to reach with your business? How well do you know your customers? Hopefully everyone's done an exercise before. They've built out a customer avatar. If you haven't, I thoroughly recommend that you do. It's really important to know who your customers are, to know what they want, and equally to know what they struggle with. Because when you understand them deeply, you can tell the right stories to actually engage them and build that deeper kind of connection with them. So I want to share a couple of examples here of people you probably recognize, and hopefully you recognize them for their passion. So we'll run through each of them. Actually, it would be really lovely if you hopped over into the chat and told me who you recognize and what is their passion. Do you know what they are passionate about? And then I'll run through each one of these as you do that. So right in the top left there, we have Davina McCall. Everyone probably knows her, national treasure. Obviously going for a very difficult time at the moment. So she's just come out of ICU, I've heard, after her brain surgery last week. But what we know Davina for is her, well, originally her fitness videos, right? That was her whole empire. It was all around building a fitness empire. But the story that she would tell around that was how much fitness helps her mental health, her physical health, and her remaining, obviously in her previous life, she was a drug addict, right? So when she became clean, fitness was her thing that helped her to remain clean. So she really talks about the power of fitness and how important it is for her mind and her body. More recently, she's really gone on a menopause route where she's really, wanting to share what she is learning. What's beautiful about this is she doesn't claim to be an expert. She doesn't claim to be someone who understands the subject in full, but she's really passionate about it and really passionate about supporting women understanding that journey. And so that's something that she's talking about. So her digital story looks a lot like, wanting to understand people, wanting to understand menopause, wanting women to have, access to information. It's a really big part of her story. Yes, she has all of her other businesses underneath it, but really what you see and what you hear her speak about, that's her passion. We have Deborah Meaden, who you recognize obviously from Dragon's Den, and she is really passionate. She runs an organization called Female Invest, and a lot of her messaging over the last 5 years or so has been around supporting women to become investors. So that's been her big passion. She's like, not enough women invest, not enough women receive investment. So this is a passion project for her. And again, yes, she has a bunch of other businesses she's speaking about, but the type of content that she's delivering is all around this bigger picture of something that she's trying to achieve. Jamie Oliver, obviously everyone will recognize, someone who's extremely passionate about healthy meals, quick family meals, making sure children get really nutritious meals in school. So all of his content that he delivers, all of anything you ever hear him tell a story about is food and how nurturing it can be and how having nutritious food is so valuable, and it's, family orientated, and it's all about us living this greater life. Yes, of course, you can go to his restaurant or you could buy any of the products that he endorses, but a lot of the story he tells is that bigger picture, right? It's thinking about the thing that he's really passionate, which is making sure children have nutritious meals and families really eat well. And then, of course, Greta Thunberg. I think we all recognize her, and her story is really quite clear, right? It's around climate change and what we are doing to our planet. So these are the sorts of stories that you want to think about. So when you're thinking for yourself and your business in terms of what you want to be known for, what is that next step? What is the bigger picture? The thing that you really, really care about that initiated you starting the business that you have today? What do you stand for and why? That's the big question that you want to answer. And I will say this first step is actually the hardest of this whole digital story. It's just figuring out the clarity around that is the bit that is the trickiest. So spend a little bit of time thinking about that, getting back to basics, remembering why you do what you do. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It can just be a one-liner. It can be a bullet point. It can be something just really, really simple and clear. But figure that out. What is it that you stand for and why? All right, so we move here onto step 2. So when we are looking to create a digital footprint, these essentially are items that your audience can find online, right? So we want to think about the different ways that people like to consume information. So some people like to watch content. Some people like to read articles. Some people like to listen to podcasts. Some people like to participate in things like webinars. So the way that we as humans like to consume information is in all different formats. And actually, even me as just one person likes to do all of the above, right? So it depends on where I am in my day, where I am in my week, what subject matter I'm researching might depend on how I want to consume information. And I'll give you an example. My commute to my office is around 15 minutes on the train, and I have a 5-minute walk on one side and a 10-minute walk on the other. It's about a 25, 30-minute commute, right? It's not quite long enough, that 15 minutes on the train, for me to read a book. It's just not long enough for me to get into it and really make a dent in it. So I prefer to listen to a podcast on my morning commute. However, in the evenings, I would really love to read a book or read a long form article. That's much more the way that I absorb information. However, throughout the day, I might really enjoy watching little video clips about whatever the subject is that I'm interested in. So just me as one individual person, the way that I consume people's stories is going to be different depending on where I am in my day. So the reason I share that is I think it's really important as business owners that are thinking about sharing, your story and your business story, is make sure that we're thinking about the different formats. So the ones you've got up here on the screen, you've got video, you've got podcasting, you've got PDF downloads, you've got checklists, you've got blogs, you've got white papers, you've got how-to guides, you've got quizzes. There's loads of different formats in terms of things that you can do to create material for people to consume that digital story of yours. Now, this feels a little overwhelming sometimes for people, so I wanted to do a quick little run through of repurposing, because I think knowing how to repurpose content effectively is a really big part of the battle, right? So I always start at the top. When I'm thinking about you think about that big passion that you have, the thing that's driving you, the thing that you really, really care about. And what you would want to do is create one big asset. So something you spend a little bit of time and has your input and has your thoughts and all of the ideas that you have around that subject. So my kind of process here really is to come up with an original piece of content, the core content. So examples here could be things like a keynote presentation, just like I'm doing right now, right? So this is a webinar. This is a whole subject that we're talking about. So put the effort into developing this whole piece of content. But does it need to stop here? No, I can be repurposing this into multiple pieces of content, and I'll talk about that in a second. However, if you're not regularly delivering things like keynotes, you may just wish to do a video interview. This is probably one of my favorite things to do, and I'll come back to this because I think I'm going to use this one as the example. Another idea might be a published book. So if you're an author and you've published a book, again, that was a lot of work that you've put all of your thought and ideas into. But you don't just want to leave it as one piece of content. You want to make sure that's being repurposed and being shared across lots of other digital formats so that people can consume that information and understand you and your background. So I'll come back to video. Video, I think I want to focus on just because I think it's the most accessible form of content. Any one of us can create it today with a smartphone. It doesn't have to be really fancy. It's really just about getting your thoughts out there and recording something, okay? So where I would start with this is I would think about what that big thing is that you care about. So what is that big thing? And answer that question, what is the big thing that you're trying to achieve in this world? And how does your business relate to that? Why are you passionate about that? What's the backstory? What do you stand for? What are the things that you care about? So start with those little questions and then build yourself out a list of 15, 20, 30, 40 different questions of things that your customers ask you, of things that your friends mention, like, oh, wow, isn't that cool that you do that? Or, oh, wow, I can see now why you do what you do. Note down all those little things because those are gold and those are the items that you want to record into a video. So once you've got all those items written down, you want to sit down with a camera and answer them. And you might spend an hour doing this, right? So you film this big, long hour piece of content. Now you have the option. You can publish that as it is. You could strip the audio off it and release it as a podcast. Or you could move down and start to think about how to repurpose that into other digital formats. So perhaps one of your questions was talking about how your work helps and supports other people. You could turn that into a case study. I mentioned obviously stripping off the audio and releasing as a podcast. Every single question should be broken down into its own blog post, and you can use AI to support yourself doing that because you've put your original idea into your answer, but you leverage some of these tools like AI to actually help you produce things like blog posts and social media posts. Obviously proof them, make sure that you've got your tone of voice there. That's the important piece with regards to working with AI. So every single, if you've asked yourself 20 questions, there should be 20 different blog posts that cover those subject matters. Perhaps you've talked about a process or steps that people must take. Then that also gets turned into a how-to guide. You might have a little slide deck you want to release off the back of those 5 points. Those 5 points might also get turned into an infographic to help people visually understand it. So it's just a different format. You can see what I'm doing here, right? So we've got video content, we've got written form, we've got visuals. Again, from each individual blog post, say we've got those 20 blog posts, each one of those can be broken down into 5 to 10 different social media posts. I would also take those original videos, dice them up and release them as 1-minute videos. These are really important things for getting your story out there. Now, one thing that might be running through people's minds right now is, oh my goodness, is there, am I just going to be repeating myself and telling the same thing over and over again? I hope the answer is actually yes. Please don't be nervous about that. You must tell your story repeatedly, over and over and over again, much more than you think that you should. It will feel like you're on repeat, but you must remember that as a consumer, as someone who's potentially, discovering you or following your brand or following you as an individual, I see the tiniest proportion of what you post. So on social media, for example, on average, people see between 2 and 4% of what gets posted. So every 100 times you tell your story, I see it 2 to 3 times. So you must speak about it regularly. It's one of those things that please don't be afraid of repeating what you've already posted or what you've already said. Yes, you can do it in all these different formats so that it's interesting and that your feed looks great and all of that kind of stuff, but you must repeat yourself regularly to make sure that people understand that's your passion, right? Let's think back to those people we talked about. How long has Jamie Oliver been talking about getting nutritious meals into schools? 10 years, maybe more. Still talks about it because it's something that he really cares about and that's his big passion. Okay, so you can't say things enough. Other formats, newsletters, email campaigns, checklists, these are all really important ways of building a digital footprint, telling your story in a digital way, okay? Break that down even further. Post them all out on social, so LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and Twitter, X, wherever that needs to go, push it out everywhere. So if you spend a lot of time kind of thinking about that process, I'll go back to the top. Once you've invested a lot of time in that core piece of content, but then breaking it down should be able, you can create months and months worth of content off the back of just putting some time and effort into that first piece of core content. There's lots of tools to help support you break this down if you're doing it yourself. Perhaps you have a team that's actually supporting you doing that. If you've got your voice and your passion and your idea into that first piece of content, anybody can take the rest of it and turn that into content for you, okay? So that is the second step. So we'll move on to step 3, which is captivate. So captivate is all around great messaging, right? Great messaging is really important here. You need to be very clear on what it is that you're communicating around your story. This is always the tricky part, particularly in the world of marketing, because it means that you're usually spending money, okay? So it's usually advertising. So this is your Google ads, your Facebook ads, your Instagram ads. This is maybe investing in PR or maybe doing partnerships with influencers or partnerships like I'm doing here today, right? So this is me doing a partnership with Constant Contact and Small Business Britain. Here I am in front of you. You're perhaps discovering me for the first time. But this is a way for me to get in front of fresh people and talk to them about things that I'm passionate about. The freest way to do this, live streams. So if you're a business that doesn't have a lot of budget to be able to spend on advertising, lives are your friend. Instagram lives, LinkedIn live, YouTube live, Facebook live, be live everywhere because it's really difficult now to get reach. So live content is definitely the way that you need to be doing it when it comes to social content, if you're not investing in PR or ads, okay? So that's going to be a really important thing. Partnerships is the other thing. Partnerships don't necessarily have to cost you money. It can be a mutual agreement where you're supporting each other. So that's another really great way of getting attention from the right type of people and telling your story, okay? Now, for a smaller business out there that, again, doesn't have a ton of money to spend on ads, how can you cut through the noise, right? Because there's a lot of businesses out there doing similar things. You're just one person or a small team of people. So I want to talk a little bit about the limbic system. So this is in your brain, okay? So it's linked to how you store memories, aka how you remember things. So your brain is actually designed to remove irrelevant information. So it just gets rid of the things that it thinks it doesn't need, right? I want to give you an analogy, which is like, imagine yourself walking down a really hectic, really busy high street. Think of Oxford Street in London, nightmare, right? Awful place to be walking, especially right now, coming up to Christmas shopping. You're making your way down Oxford Street and there's thousands of people coming towards you, but you have a destination in mind, right? You know where you're going. And isn't it incredible that you can weave your way through this crowd of people and you don't bump into people and you're not falling all over the ground? And it's like you're actually weaving your way through and you're able to avoid all of the distraction that's coming towards you. Well, all of those people coming towards you in the street, this is very similar to digital noise. It's very similar to marketing messages that you're kind of, coming at you constantly. So you want to think, how can we cut through that? And how, like, if everyone's being bombarded with a lot of different messages, how do I stand out and how do I cut through that? Well, there's 5 different ways. Some of them we want to embrace, and some of them we really don't. So here they are. The first is scary. If you are scared, so imagine yourself walking down that busy street and someone jumps out and scares you, you see something really terrifying, like you're going to remember that, you're going to notice it, you can't just stay on your path, like you're terrified. So scaring people is a way of cutting through. Not necessarily what I'm recommending. I don't think that we should be scaring any of our customers into working with us, but it is a technique of cutting through that limbic system and getting attention, okay? So seeing something really scary. The second way that you can cut through and make sure that people remember you is by something strange. This actually isn't a great picture, but I wanted to show there's a jar there of mayonnaise from Leon. So when you see someone dressed up in a jar of mayonnaise on the street, it gets your attention, right? It makes you like double take and you have a look at that person. So when you see something that's out of place, something that's a little odd, something that's a bit strange, that cuts through people's system and gets their attention, okay? The third thing is something sexy. So if you have a sexy brand, great, good for you. Most of us don't. Most of us don't have a way of kind of doing something really sexy online. Unfortunately, we just don't. And, many of us don't want to. So the 3 at the top, the scary, the strange, and the sexy, maybe is not for us, right? As smaller businesses, it's not necessarily something we want to be scaring or doing anything really weird or doing anything sexy. But the 2 at the bottom, I think, are really important, the 2 Fs. So imagine, again, yourself walking down that really busy, hectic street. And if you saw someone someone you went to school with, someone you used to work with, one of your best mates, you're going to notice that person. It's going to grab your attention, right? So as busy as you are trying to get through that high street, you spot them immediately. So a familiar face, that familiarity principle, that's a way of getting noticed. So I'll come back to that in a sec. The second thing is something for free, okay? If someone's handing you out something for free on the street, you usually, double take and try and grab something. Same thing happens with your digital story online. If you're giving someone really high value, something for free, it's going to get their attention. They're going to sign up for, a newsletter or something like that. So that's a way of getting people's attention. So a smaller business, you don't have tons of money to spend on ads. You want to be focusing on these 2 principles. I think for becoming familiar and thinking about how you can offer something that isn't going to cost you a lot of money, but something that you can give away that's of high value for free. So the familiarity thing is really important, right? So this is where we were talking earlier about needing to share your digital story on a regular basis, really cutting through and sharing that constantly. So that when people see you pop up online, whether they're Googling something, whether it's on social media, they immediately know, I know that person and I know that this is what they do. So it takes some time and it takes a lot of you communicating your digital story in all those different formats that we talked about to cut through that noise, okay? But that can be really, really effective. That brings us on to the next step, which is capture. So this is step 4. So capture, this is all around your base camp, really, like a destination that you're sending people to. So for most of us, this will be a website, okay? So when building a digital story, you really do need this home base. So you need somewhere that your audience can visit to find everything about you. And in the world of marketing, we also want people to, we want to take advantage of this, and we want people to opt in to something. So we want to capture their details. So you might want to have a newsletter opt-in. You might want to have a discount code in exchange for an email address, right? So you've got this website, which is going to host your digital story. It's going to be the base camp that all the other digital platforms that you use, you can push people back to this website, and this is where you're going to push people to and can hopefully capture their details. I've got a little example of my website here. So the website, it's a really big part of your digital story. Firstly, it ranks really high in Google search, right? That's going to be a huge value add for you for being recognized. So that's a key thing to kind of focus on there. It is where your audience can go and they can deep dive into what they really want to know about you. So I want to make sure that when you're thinking about your website, include these things. Firstly, your story. Tell people why you do what you do. Talk about your mission, what it is that you're trying to achieve. Talk about why you're passionate about this. Why do you care? Don't forget to talk about how you can help, how you can serve your audience, i.e., what are you selling? Make sure you include case studies, reviews, recommendations. And you also want to have some thought leadership there too. So that could be a blog, could be a link to podcast episodes you've appeared on, anything like that. Share your ideas, share your knowledge, share why you do what you do. It doesn't always have to be about the product or the service. It can be about these bigger picture things that you are really, really passionate about. Okay, so that brings us on to the fifth step, which for our digital story is the final one, which is around converse. So this is all about building and nurturing a relationship. Okay, so nurturing plays a really big role in your digital story because it's where people really get to know you. Too often, especially in my world in marketing, people think once you get people to the website, that's it, bang, they just buy from you. It's that easy. It's not. There's a lot of nurturing and a lot of communication and a lot of relationship development that has to happen, okay? So I love once you can kind of get people into one of these nurturing pipelines, because it just means that you have such an opportunity to continue sharing your story and why you're so passionate about what you're doing. So we'll talk about email first. Email is completely underrepresented, I think, in my mind. I'm not just saying that because Constant Contact are hosting this call, but it's one of those things that actually has one of the highest conversion rates in digital marketing. And it's funny because I speak to a lot of business owners that will often be like, they're always on socials or they have social media, but maybe only 50% of businesses actually do email, which is mind-blowing to me. Conversion rates on email, I think the average conversion rate sits at like 4 to 5%. Obviously, if you're amazing, it can be as high as 15%. But if you compare that to, for example, social media, which converts at sort of 1 to 2%, 1 to 2 to 4 to 5%, that's a big difference. For every 100 people that are following you on social media, you're reaching 1 that maybe becomes a customer. Whereas on email, for every 100, maybe 5 are becoming a customer. That's a really big deal. So that's something that email is fantastic for that. You can continue to kind of share your ideas, share things that are happening in your business, share breaking things that have happened in your industry that you're really like worked up about and angry about. Share things that you're excited about that have happened. Make sure that you're communicating with your audience. Make it valuable, okay? We don't need to be sending emails for the sake of sending emails, but we do have interesting, important things to say. So make sure that you are communicating that with your target audience. Social media, similar thing. I think this is probably the area that we're all most familiar in. With regards to organic social media, this is very much, in my opinion, the nurturing part, right? Organic is really tricky to get people's attention, to just gain new audience. That's really tricky to do without advertising. But people that are following you on your organic social media accounts, or following you organically, I should say, they are interested in you already and they liked you. That was the reason they followed you in the first place. So it's really important to continue to tell your story. And I want to use this example here of Joe Wicks. Obviously, everyone became familiar with Joe during lockdown, right? However, what I love about his social media is actually really great in terms of when you look at what he produces and what he publishes. He does this really, really well. Look at the first post. This is just published last week. My 10-year overnight success. And that's the funniest thing about this is people assume that he made it during lockdown, right? But no, he had a business 10 years before that, the hard graph that went into the 10 years before that. So he's done a little video where he's talked about that. his next video there, he's done a thank you video where he's thanking, you know, people that have worked with him, people that have commented on his social media. He's just done a grateful post, you know, where he's grateful for everybody that's engaging with him. He's got some great examples there of work that he's done, so case studies of his clients. He's got ideas and recipes that he eats and shares. He's got a little sexy post going on down there. Like, you know, leverage it where you can. He talks here about the stuff that he does for schools. You know, I think he's a really brilliant example of, you might consider him famous, right? Where he's got a big audience and a lot of people are following him, yet he is still sharing his story, right? His 10-year overnight success story, still telling people why he's passionate about what he's doing. He doesn't stop. It's not that we get to a point where we have so many followers, we don't need to do that anymore. We always should be doing that. So definitely make sure that that's something that you're, you know, building into your process. So more than 82% of people trust a company whose CEO and team engage in social media. That's some research that was just released by Brandfog. 82%. 82% of people trust a company whose CEO, that's you, the founder, and team engage in social media. If that's not a reason for you to be telling your story, I don't know what is. So, you know, that's really, really important. Let's do a little recap here before we're going to jump into some Q&A in a moment. So if anybody has questions about the application of what we're talking about here today, please do get over into the chat. But we'll start here from the beginning. So when we're thinking about Connect, we've identified, you know, who we are, what we stand for, and who we want to reach, right? That's an important step one. The second part here is create. So we want to publish videos, blogs, images, downloads, white papers. We then want to think about how to captivate attention. So that might be running ads, it might be doing PR, it might be doing live streams to gain attention, some kind of partnerships, right? We then want to think about where we're pushing people. So where are we going to capture them? Hopefully that looks like a website, and that website should tell your story and should host all of the content about you. So the news articles and PR that you've linked in, you can link off to your social medias. It's got your ideas and your thought leadership articles. You know, all of that should be hosted on your website. And then, of course, probably the most important step in my view, which is converse. So it's all about nurturing that audience with your social media, with your email, to make sure that you're building a deeper connection with your audience. Oh, I just spotted this actually. I spotted this yesterday. This was an article released on Forbes on Sunday, November 17th. So it's all about how micro experiences are building loyalty in an oversaturated market. So I thought this was such great news for small businesses, because essentially the gist of it is, in the long run, micro experiences that people have transform into really long lasting relationships. So this means things like when someone is commenting on your social media, responding to the comment in a really lovely way. When someone is responding to an email that you've sent out, making sure you are actually getting back to that person. Those sort of micro experiences where you're building a relationship with your audience will have an incredible impact on you in the long term. They will become loyal followers of yours and want to purchase from your business and want to support your passion. So I thought that was really lovely to actually see. Brilliant. I've left us loads of time. That's good. I was worried that I was going to talk too much. So we've got some time now to do some Q&A. So I'd love to welcome back Dave and Karen. And we can maybe have a chat about some of these topics and our digital story.
Amazing. First off, thank you, Stacey. That was absolutely brilliant. So insightful and so wonderful. So we've had a few questions and comments. You've inspired somebody to start doing lives. People are going to get on it. So we'd love to bring Dave back in here as well. And Raka, who's there, hi Raka, has just said about, do you recommend a certain time to be live on each of the platforms? Dave, do you have any thoughts on this as well? That would be great to get you in.
I might have to defer to Stacey on that one. I actually have not done a lot on the live side. I think timing is one of those interesting things. I will say this though, I think it's really about thinking about what is right for your business, right? So we can throw out some ideas or places to start. That's typically what you think of as best practices, right? I don't know what to do, so start here. I think it's about paying attention to see what works for one, your business, what you can consistently commit to, and then also what you're seeing based on the audience that you're trying to reach. Because all that really matters is not what somebody else is doing or somebody said you should do, but what's actually working for the people that are in front of you that are important to your business.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great point, because I think honestly, people will always find a reason not to do live content. So please don't allow, oh no, I've missed the time slot, to stop you from doing something. Do it. There's no like true answer to that. There's a lot of tracking software that you can use to see when the majority of your followers are actually online. So I use Sprout Social, for example, and that will tell me like when the majority of my audience are actually online. So I could carve it out around that particular time. I don't want to say, you know, on LinkedIn it's between 1 and 2, and between this platform it's between this and this, because ultimately it depends who's following you. Like, where are your audience based? Are they UK based or are they global? 80% of my business is in the US. So what is a reasonable time for me in the UK is not what is going to work for the majority of my clients. So I don't think that there's necessarily a particularly right time. I'd say, one, make it work for your schedule. And then, as Dave just suggested, you know, look at how people engage and if that is delivering at the right time. And you'll learn basically based on the results that you see.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. We've had another question in from Helen here, just saying, because she's got 2 strands to her business. She's saying, what advice can you offer for someone who wants to sell their own artwork product to members of the public, but she also wants to sell creative content services as a VA, B2B, so business to business. So she wants to operate under one business name and ethos, but they're 2 different client bases. So you've almost got 2 hats on there, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this is common for lots of people. Like I own multiple businesses. It's one of those things where, like, yeah, everyone's always like, oh my God, what are you talking about today? Which business is this and whatever. I think you just have to remember that we as humans, we're complex people, and people understand that now. Like, people don't pigeonhole us the way that they used to, where you have to do this one thing. So what I would say with that is, I think you as the individual have a bunch of different things. You have maybe these 2 sort of businesses that you're running. And again, you probably have a bunch of other stuff that goes on in your life, of which you may wish to share as part of your digital story. And that's you. So that's your personal brand. And then I would say with the businesses, you probably want your businesses to have really clear brand identities, just to help with customers discovering you and making sure they're in the right place. You can do it on the same website. That is definitely possible. I've seen it done successfully. If they're too closely related, sometimes it can be a little bit confusing. So you may want to decide whether you want separate websites for the 2 different businesses. But you as a person, your own personal brand and the story that you share, you can talk about whatever you like. It's making sure that you're just clear on, like, this is this one that I'm talking about now, and then this is this other thing that I'm talking about. And they will overlap, right? There's always going to be an overlap. It's a bit like Jamie Oliver is a perfect example of this, right? Where he talks about food and healthy meals and nutrition, and that's the thing that he's really passionate about. But then he has restaurants, he has cookware range, he has books, he has this, he has that. Like, you can talk about all of those things. It's just finding out what that through thread is, and that's the key message that you're kind of communicating with people.
Yeah. And from your side of that, Dave, then obviously with Constant Contact, that's a system to harbour your data and to speak to your database. Would you, when you've got those 2 hats on, would you have separate marketing for each one? Or does it really depend?
Yeah, so I think I would look at it like this. I mean, I think Stacey made a great point just in terms of like thinking about your personal brand. One is one thing that is the umbrella that is able to do all of these things. And I'm leaning on the side of my instinct is to say, yeah, but the businesses, it's really important to try to keep those, I think, separate, just because you are talking to different audiences. I think oftentimes too, looking at the nature of this, there could be some crossover in terms of thinking about, like, if you're creating content, maybe the way you use your artwork or some of the things that you do to promote your artwork could be examples of types of content that you create, right? On that other one. So you're kind of mixing and matching and showing those things. But to your point, in terms of the communicating, you know, with email marketing, one of the things that I love about it is that you can be specific about how you arrange your contacts, right? So thinking about how you're using what we call segmentation. And so you have this group of people that have raised their hand to receive messages from you. Then you can start to say, like, okay, like, what are the interests of these people? And there's numerous ways you can start to use the data to do this. I mean, you can have people join lists for specific things, or you could use actions people take and behaviors to then categorize people in different things. And so it really allows you to organize your contacts in a way that allows you to then communicate the right things to them. And so that is a way I would think about that portion of it as well.
Yeah, makes sense completely. Another question here. When the audience is more about retention, storytelling of how you started, may not become so apparent. So when do you sort of change the narrative? You were talking about Joe Wicks, weren't you, and the fact that he still very much talks about his life and his story and his authenticity in that way. But how does it change?
Yeah, so I think yeah, you don't necessarily have to be telling your origin story the whole time, but there'll be a reason that you do what you do. There'll be a reason that you're passionate about whatever it is that your business does. And so that I think should never stop, because I think as much as you feel like you've said it a million times or that you feel like your audience already knows it, they may not. I definitely have plenty of clients that I work with now that are like, oh, I know I've been your client for 8 years, but I didn't know that you did this type of thing. And I'm like, wow, what? Like, I feel like I'm talking about that all the time. So I wouldn't assume that just because they're really engaged or they've been a customer for a long time that they know everything. Fair enough. You don't want to be talking about the origin story constantly, but certainly talking about the passion and why you care about it. And there's different ways you can do that, right? So let's say the one thing for me that drives everything that I do is around equality. So that's like the big mission for us. Well, for me personally, and also for my businesses, equality is really important to me. We do a lot of work around focusing on reducing inequality. The way that shows up in my digital business is things like I think that no matter the size of your business, you deserve to have visibility for the work that you do. So that drives my marketing, right? So the way that I might talk about that isn't necessarily, my origin story, which was, around some of the work I did when I was traveling and met, people that had come from really awful, areas, and sort of that was the motivation for me. And I do talk about that sometimes, but it's not something that I'm throwing out towards my digital marketing all the time. Yet equality as a whole is something I'm talking about. So I think that to answer, I think was it Pinky that asked that question? Yeah, I think it's really just around thinking about what that narrative is, like what that through line is that you're really passionate about. That's the thing that you keep talking about. And there'll be developments that happen, right? Whatever that, let's say, for example, for me, it's equality. There'll be developments that happen. I don't know, in 2017, when the United Nations put out the Sustainable Development Goals, that was an opportunity for me to talk about something new around that same subject matter, but just in a different way. Again, as there's breakthroughs in changes that are things that are happening in the world, I can then talk about that again. So I might bring sort of things that are happening in the real world into some of that storytelling, but what I'm speaking about is still the same thing. I hope that makes sense.
I just want to add to that. I also think this is a great opportunity to think about incorporating automation into what you do, right? And the reason I say that is because if you think about one of the things we talked about here is always looking to add people and moving people kind of closer to your business, and like starting on social, moving them to email marketing and doing those things. And because you're consistently doing that, you're constantly getting new people into the fold. And it's a really good opportunity to, as somebody joins your email list for the first time, you set up an automation on the back of that that can actually start to tell that same story, kind of like the origin story, the beginning story, that yeah, somebody may have heard that 3 months ago, but if somebody joins your email list 3 months from now, well, they're starting at square one, right? And so it's a good opportunity to allow you to kind of level set people and let them know the things that they need to know about you, so your story becomes fuller to them, and you start to build those relationships that are important.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Marina, hi Marina. It says, when the mission that you're passionate about brings you most of your work, how do you talk about the other work you may do in the areas that you're maybe less passionate about, such as, the bread and butter work that pays the bills, but doesn't always light your fire, which is an absolute brilliant analogy. So,
Yeah.
what do we do in that situation? Because you still have to earn money, right? That's why we're in business.
Yeah, so sorry, I didn't know if Dave was going to jump in there or not me. So
I was rereading that again. Sorry.
no, you're fine. I was like, I feel like you're
I know
ready to say something. Yeah, so I think I think in Marina's question there, she's saying that the mission is bringing in the majority of her work, but perhaps if we flip it the other way, which is, let's say you're passionate about something and actually the work that you're getting is not necessarily the stuff that, is getting you really excited. I think the message there is still to communicate that big thing that you're passionate about and what you really care about, because ultimately you're trying to build an audience of people that do resonate with what you care about and that you like working with. I think that's really, really important. I've been drumming on about what I drum on about for 13 years. I've been running my agency, and I still get, probably 60% of my business don't buy into the whole sustainability piece that we talk about. Like, they just don't. And that's fine. And they're still wonderful businesses, but they're not really bought into like the stuff that we really care about. And that's fine. So I don't think you don't run the risk of repelling. I don't think it's more about just continuing to tell the story of the things that you care about and making sure that you're building an audience of people that feel the same. But likewise, I guess if we go back to Joe Wicks's kind of feed, I know we're just talking about social in that example, but he's talking about all different things there, right? He's showing some fitness. He's showing some examples of client work. He's showing some food videos. He's talking about his own story. You can be doing the same. So you can talk about those passion subjects, but then you can also be like, hey, here's this other great piece of work that I just did for this client. And it doesn't have to be related. It's still amazing work. And I think that is important to do, because sometimes, I get approached all the time and people say like, oh, I know that you love working with this type of business, but actually I do this. And it still works out and can become a really great business relationship. So I think you can do it all. I don't think you have to choose.
I want to add to that.
Share it in case studies, I would say. Yeah. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I think it's important to also understand, like to your point, that there are different audiences that you're reaching with these messages that you're talking about. I like to think about it across kind of 4 Ps, right? Peers, pros, patrons, and promoters. So peers are people that are kind of doing the same thing as you on the same level. Pros are people maybe doing it a little bit better, people you aspire to, people maybe you want to look to get to that next level with. Patrons, of course, are the people that will purchase from you, and then those promoters are the people that just like what you're doing and have other people that would find what you do beneficial, right? And so I think, to Stacey's point, yeah, continuing to talk about those things that are important to you allow you to make those connections across that whole swath of like the different audiences that are out there that can be beneficial to you in some way. I'm not saying to be opportunistic, but if you think of it like that, it's like there are these different relationships that you're making that have a different purpose within your business journey, that the connections are the things that allow to happen because we're being people and talking about those things that we're passionate about. And that's what helps you connect.
Brilliant. Thank you. We haven't got time. We've got time for a couple more. It's all about the technology side. So Judith was saying, I love the waterfall repurposing. Any platform to automate help with this that you recommend that are reasonably priced for small businesses? Dave, I imagine, could help there.
Well, so, I look at it, so Constant Contact, of course, has tools within it that allow you to, so one of the things, so almost every tool has some type of AI component to it now. And Constant Contact similarly has content generators, but also you can take a content, let's say you had a piece of content that you can actually plug that into Constant Contact. You can, again, turn it into an email for you, right? It can turn it into summarize it, turn it into a social post, right? And so it actually helps. And so you can schedule that through your Constant Contact account as well. And so, there's tools like that, of course. And, we think, of course, Constant Contact for the marketing tools that you'd get as a whole are obviously reasonably priced. There are other tools that are built specifically to do those things. I'm sure Stacey may have some examples there. But I think realistically, oftentimes the biggest step is not so much what is the tool that helps you repurpose? It's what is it that makes you put the time in the calendar to create the thing in the first place? And so making sure that you're doing that, I think, is often the most important step.
Mm-hmm. Anything to add there, Stacey?
I think you've said that beautifully, Dave.
Thank you.
Well, that's the biggest challenge, is the first piece, right? That's the biggest challenge. Like, don't worry about the repurposing, just make the first piece. Create the first piece of content, and then it becomes easy. But yeah, I mean, there's loads of tools out there. Obviously, Constant Contact is great for that. You can default to things like, the average ChatGPT, where you can kind of teach it to do different things depending on what you're wanting it to repurpose into. We've used tools like Launch Lemonade. If you just Google whatever it is that you want to do, if it's taking like text to video, there's an AI tool for that. If it's taking video to text, there's an AI tool for that. Loads of them are free, loads of them are low cost. Quite honestly, there's hundreds of them now. So I think it's just about finding what's right for you. But I would say, before you get bogged down in how to do the repurposing, as Dave says, just create the first piece of content. I think that is definitely the key part.
Amazing. So I'm afraid we have got to wrap this up because we're nearly at our time. But if you do have any more questions that you've thought of or we haven't got to, drop us a line at hello@smallbusinessbritain.uk and we'll make sure that Stacey and Dave get them. But I just want to say a big, massive thank you to Stacey and Dave for joining us today. It was such a fantastic presentation, so insightful, really loved it. And, thank you ever so much. We have got 2 more webinars on the way with Constant Contact, which we're really looking forward to. The next one is the 26th of November, which is all about being digitally disciplined. My goodness, you can't say that after a drink. Digitally disciplined. And it's all about, how you can stay focused in terms of your digital output. It's really a really interesting topic. And then on the 3rd of December, we've got the lovely Manal Patel, who actually used to work at Constant Contact, who's talking to us all about data and the fact that the data is really the only thing we own, really, when you think about it. So how we need to protect it, grow it, nurture it. So it's going to be really, really good. If you want to have a look at this recording again, we will be sending it out in either tomorrow or the next day to everybody that registered, so you can dip in and out with all this incredible information that Stacey and Dave have given you. So a huge thank you to both. I really appreciate it. Please check out Constant Contact. We did have an opt-in, whether you would like to hear more from them. If you said yes, they will be in touch with you. If you changed your mind and you said no and you now want to say yes, drop us a line and Constant Contact will be in touch for definite. So see you soon. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.